Brooklyn, late 1960s. A city of dreams for tourists. But for the kids born in Brownsville, it was a dead lighter, used, dirty, and forgotten. Mike Tyson wasn't born into a family. He was born onto a forgotten battlefield. The man called his father, Purcell Tyson, never once held him, and never left behind anything but a name. No phone calls, no pictures, no apologies. Just a shadow that disappeared into the night like he never existed. His mother, Lorna Smith, was a worn-out woman. Waitressing by day, washing clothes for neighbors by night, faking smiles for drunk customers just to earn tips. She wasn't a bad person. She was just too exhausted to be a mother. Mike's childhood played out in a third-floor roach-infested apartment, full of mold, rats, and screaming voices. The walls were so damp you could draw with your fingertips. Whenever it rained, cold drops would leak from the ceiling, landing on his pillow like frozen blood. Mike didn't have teddy bears. He had a dead rat that once chewed through his shoelaces. No bedtime stories. Just the sounds of men yelling at his mother from behind the walls. One time, he asked, "Mom, where's Dad?" Lorna said nothing, lit a cigarette, turned her back. After that, Mike never asked again. Mike grew up in suffocating silence. Not because no one talked to him, but because he couldn't talk. He stuttered. Badly. Every word felt like a brick in his throat. Trying to speak was like choking on dry ice. B.B. Bro. There. Before he could finish the sentence, a shoe hit him in the head, followed by a chorus of laughs. Pig trying to speak? Yo, is this kid brain damaged? Mike curled up. Didn't cry. He knew tears didn't stop the pain. They only made the next hit come faster. He was bullied, not because he was different, but because he was too weak to fight back. They'd corner him in the yard, shove mud in his mouth, force him to kneel in front of the class. One time, they made him lick someone's shoes, while the rest of the boys clapped and laughed. He came home quietly. Didn't tell his mom. Didn't want her to worry. But strangely, she never asked. One September afternoon, Mike sat alone on the roof. Below, in a narrow alley, a few older boys split up a bag of white powder. Wind brushed through his hair. He closed his eyes. And one thought echoed in his mind. If I were stronger, no one would ever do that to me again. Mike was never taught to trust. He was taught to survive. In a world with no justice, no safety nets, only predators and prey. He started stealing from small stores. First a candy bar, then bread, soda, even shoes. Not because he was starving, but because stealing was the only time he felt in control. At age 12, Mike made it onto the local police radar, officially labeled a problem kid. But what hurt the most wasn't getting arrested, wasn't the bruises. It was when his mother stood in front of the officer and said, "I don't know who this boy is anymore." Mike remembered that night. He came home late, bleeding from a fight. His mother didn't scold him, didn't ask. She just pulled the blanket up, turned her face to the wall. He stood there, silent, then turned around and walked away. Sometimes, pain doesn't scream. It just stays, long enough to feel like furniture. No hugs. No, "I'm proud of you." No one ever said, "Mike, you did good." In Brownsville, rearview mirrors were a luxury. No one dared look back. Because in this place, your past would crash you into a wall. Mike Tyson, just a boy then, was already marked by fate. A beast. Fatherless. Broken beyond repair. But somewhere, under all that rubble, a fighter was beginning to form. Quietly. Fiercely. Without anyone noticing. No one taught Mike Tyson how to be a thief. And no one tried to stop him. In Brownsville, kids grew like weeds. They survived, sprouted, and stabbed back when cornered. By age 10, Mike knew how to crack fake safes with a razor blade. He ran faster than the sound of police sirens. He could glance at someone and tell how much cash was in their pocket. It wasn't a game. It was the only way to survive. When hunger gnawed at his stomach and the fridge held nothing but tap water. When holes opened in his shoes and his mother's sweat-soaked sweater clung to his back. Mike understood. Morals wouldn't keep him alive. Only fists and fear could save him from being trampled. He ran with gangs. Didn't talk much. Didn't smile. A skinny black kid who always walked last. But his eyes never blinked. When someone stared at Mike, he stared back. Deep. Cold. There was nothing remarkable. Except for that look. The eyes of an animal that had once been backed into a corner. At 11, Mike knocked out a teenager twice his size with his bare hands. Not because he wanted to. Because the kid kicked one of his pigeons. When the pigeon died, Mike didn't cry. He just sat still, clutching the small, lifeless body, and stared at the boy like he could rip his face apart. After the beating, Mike said just one thing: "I could kill a man." The crew laughed, but no one ever got too close to him again. Police arrested Mike for the first time at age 12. Robbery, assault, property damage. His rap sheet was longer than a history textbook. Each line, a scar carved into a childhood never given a chance. When they brought him home, his mother just quietly signed the papers. Didn't ask, didn't look, as if her son had already stopped being hers. The justice system didn't know what to do with Mike Tyson. Too young for prison, too wild for the streets. So they dumped him into Tryon School for Boys, a juvenile facility dressed in the lie of rehabilitation. But behind the doors, it was a cage for broken animals. At Tryon, the softest thing was your skin, until someone decided to rip it open. Mike arrived as a quiet, scrawny black kid with empty hands. Within 24 hours, everyone knew. He wasn't there to make friends. No one welcomed him. No warnings. Just cold, slicing stares from hairline to soles. A bigger kid tried to take his lunch tray. Mike didn't argue. He just smashed a spoon straight into the guy's nose. Blood sprayed across a guard's shirt. They threw Mike into solitary. No light, no mattress, no questions. He sat on the concrete floor, back to the wall, heart steady like a snake digesting its prey. Here, the law was simple: eat or be eaten. When he came out, Mike didn't apologize. Didn't look at anyone. He just walked the halls like a shadow dragging the chill of hell behind him. Mike became a ghost story. No one laughed at his lisp anymore. No one dared touch his pigeons. No one knew that inside that wiry frame, a beast was learning how to stay silent before striking. He wrote no letters home. No one visited. The outside world had abandoned Mike long ago. But inside these four frozen walls, Mike was forging himself into steel. He did push-ups on bare knuckles. Kept going until his hands bled. Not for anyone. Not for glory. Just because he knew. His body was the one weapon the world couldn't take away. Tryon didn't reform Mike. It just made the fire inside him burn smoother. The only thing that stopped it from consuming everything was a man Mike hadn't met yet. A man who would change everything. The empty room inside the juvenile facility was as silent as a punch not yet thrown. There stood a 13-year-old boy, eyes bloodshot like a chained stray dog, waiting. Mike Tyson, his rap sheet thicker than a school textbook, filled with theft, assault, and threats with weapons, was about to face an old man with silver hair and a gaze that could cut through bone. Cuz D'Amato entered with nothing but a worn pair of boxing gloves and eyes that saw too much. He didn't ask for Mike's name. No handshake. No small talk. Just a stare. "Kid," Cuz growled, voice gravelly. "Heard you're pretty good with your fists. Like punching people in the face, huh?" Mike stared back, unflinching. "I punched to survive." Cuz nodded slowly. "Good. Now let me ask you something. Do you want the world to fear you? Or do you want the world to respect you?" Mike stayed silent. Cuz stepped closer, dropped the gloves into Mike's hands. "Take these. If you believe you can become a champion, you stay. If not, walk away. I'm not here to babysit." The air stood still. Mike didn't say a word, but he gripped the gloves like they were the last chance he'd ever hold. For the first time, someone didn't throw him out. Didn't treat him like an animal. Instead, he was challenged, like a warrior. From that moment on, hell began. Cuz rebuilt Mike from the ground up. At 4 a.m., when the town was still asleep, Mike was out in the cold, lungs burning in the fog. 8 kilometers of running every morning, bricks stuffed in his backpack. He hit the heavy bag until his knuckles split open and bled. Cuz didn't allow rest. If you can breathe, you can fight. Mike learned every movement, like the dance of a Roman gladiator. Slip, pivot, punch, move. The same drills repeated thousands of times until his muscles remembered what his brain couldn't. Cuz plastered photos of old champions on the walls made Mike memorize their names like alphabets. Don't just hit, Cuz barked. Think. Feel. Become the nightmare when they close their eyes. But training wasn't just physical. Cuz forced Mike to sit for hours, rewinding footage of classic fights. "Stop," Cuz would shout. "See that hook? It started with a glance. Learn it." And they'd rewind again and again until Mike understood. Victory wasn't in the hardest punch. It lived in the perfect timing. Cuz forged not just muscle, but will. One day, when Mike was exhausted and ready to quit, Cuz threw the gloves to the floor and pointed to the door. If you quit now, you go back to stealing, back to prison, back to being like your father. Or you walk back in here, start over, and the world will bow to you. Mike stood trembling, not from fatigue, but from something deeper. It was the first time someone got angry because they believed in him. Outside the ring, Cuz became more than a coach. He became a father. He taught Mike how to wear a white shirt, how to tie a tie, how to sit at the table like a gentleman. He showed him how to read an opponent's face with just the eyes. Every evening, Cuz cooked simple meals, fried eggs, warm soup, and read biographies aloud. Napoleon, Alexander the Great, Muhammad Ali. He whispered into Mike's subconscious, greatness isn't just about victory, it's about domination. Mike had never met anyone like him. No yelling, no beatings, just discipline and unconditional care. When Mike had nightmares, Cuz didn't speak. He just stood outside the door until the screaming stopped. When Mike got sick, Cuz sat by his bed, fanning him and wiping the sweat from his forehead. What does a real father look like? Mike once asked. Cuz simply smiled. Someone who doesn't walk away, even when you're dangerous. Cuz love was never loud. It was in the tape around Mike's fists. The new boxing shoes left at the door. The stern eyes that never blinked when Mike tried to give up. A warrior cannot afford to be soft, he once said. But a warrior must never be abandoned. Mike had lived like a wild dog, feral, lonely, numb. But under Cuz's roof, he discovered a new language. He punched not to destroy, but to survive. To repay. To become someone Cuz could be proud of. And in that dusty old gym, amidst the sound of jump ropes slapping the floor, leather pounding against canvas, and the breath of a boy being reborn, a legend began to form. No one knew exactly when Mike stopped being a predator and became a warrior. But one thing is certain, Cuz didn't just build a champion. He saved a soul. Mike once thought that all it took was a powerful punch, that knocking someone out was enough to win. But Cuz saw things differently. He saw Mike as an uncarved stone, solid, wild, undefined. And Cuz didn't need a street brawler. He needed a warrior with a purpose. Victory doesn't come from your fists, Cuz said, his voice steady but sharp, slicing through the haze of youth. It comes from a mind that refuses to break, and a heart that knows exactly who it is. Mike didn't understand at first. He still fought with instinct, drenched in sweat, pounding the heavy bag until his hands went numb. But at night, when the gym was empty and only the ropes swayed in the silence, another sound emerged, the voice inside himself. A voice asking, "Who are you, Mike?" No cheers. No enemies. Just silence, and the boy facing himself in the dark. He began to realize the most painful blow didn't come from an opponent's punch, it came from the fear of being forgotten. The fear that after everything, he would just be another name on a rap sheet, lost in time. Cuz knew that fear. Every morning, he sat with Mike in front of a mirror. Forced him to look, not at his muscles, not his face, but into his eyes. Look deep. What do you see? Mike never answered. But that night, he cried silently. Because for the first time, he didn't see a beast. He saw a child, tired, angry, abandoned, pounding on the walls of his own skin, begging to be let out. And from that moment, the awakening began. Mike trained like a man possessed. Not to defeat anyone, but to peel away the layers of the past that clung to him like scars. At 4 a.m., he ran through the snow as if trying to outrun the ghost of who he used to be. Every jump rope skip was a severed tie with the streets. Every punch to the bag was a vow. I'm not going back. Cuz never praised him, but he was always there. At every session, every meal, every nightmare. He was the shadow behind the light, the warm breath when Mike collapsed. Get up. You weren't born to kneel. Some days, Mike wanted to quit. Exhausted. In pain. Pressure crushing him like stone. But Cuz would come close, rest a hand on his shoulder, and say just one line. No one can teach you how to be a man if you don't want to become one. And Mike stood up again. Not with muscle, but with will. With rebellion, against the boy he used to be. Night after night, he stared into the mirror. No longer afraid. No longer angry. Just facing himself. Eyes steady, like he was finally speaking to a soul that had been waiting for years to be seen. Cuz saw it. He didn't say much, but the pride in his gaze said everything. Sometimes he sat alone in the dark, smiling faintly, whispering to no one. The beast has learned to master its claws. Now it will learn to fly. From a lost boy, Mike became a machine sculpted by love and discipline. A creature with purpose in every step. Meaning in every punch. And a mission in every win, to rewrite the story written for him. He was no longer Mike Tyson, the stuttering kid, the petty thief, the angry ghost in a juvenile file. He was Mike Tyson, emerging from the fire, not burned, but blazing. A warrior reborn. A legend awakened. Nothing in the gym could prepare Mike for the nightmare called real combat. No punching bag knows how to dodge, and no trainer throws a hook with the hatred of a man trying to destroy you. Mike Tyson stood in the corner of the ring, heart pounding like a war drum, fists trembling inside his gloves. The crowd roared, the lights burned hot, and across from him stood his first real opponent, a taller, older fighter with more than 10 brutal matches under his belt. He looked at Mike with a mocking grin, like he already saw a dead man walking. Mike swallowed hard. Sweat ran down his spine. This wasn't training. This was war. The bell rang like the toll of doom. Mike rushed forward on instinct, but just 3 steps in, a sudden punch cracked across his face. There was no cuss to guide him now, no familiar shoulder tap, just a blinding jolt of pain tearing through his skull. The opponent didn't let up. He unleashed a storm of fists, each one thrown with the rage of a lifetime. Mike was pushed into the corner, arms raised in panic, eyes wide with fear as the crowd's roar became deafening. Blood dripped from his nose. Images of Cuz, the gym, those warm, quiet moments, all of it blurred in the chaos. Then, through the storm, a voice broke through, raw, thunderous, unforgettable. Are you a warrior, or are you just another scared little kid? It was Cuz. He wasn't soothing this time. He was yelling, roaring, like he was grabbing Mike's soul and dragging it out of the dark. Don't let them see fear in your eyes. Don't let them see the kid. You're the beast I created. You were born to finish, not survive. Mike's eyes snapped open. Through the blood and haze, he saw the opponent still swinging. But this time, he saw the opening. A mistake. A gap. He slipped the next punch and exploded out of the corner like a bullet. He was no longer the bullied kid. No longer the inmate from Tryon. This was Mike Tyson, awake, alive, unleashed. His first punch struck the opponent's chin, stopping him cold. The air thickened. The fight shifted. Mike pressed in, throwing a storm of punches powered by every ounce of pain. His empty stomach, his father's death, his mother's illness, every shove, every insult, every time someone called him a failure. Cuz said nothing more. He didn't need to. He stood outside the ropes, watching. He knew this was the moment Mike killed the last fragile piece of himself. The final uppercut roared like thunder, and the opponent collapsed, unable to rise. The crowd exploded. Mike stood over him, breathing hard, saying nothing. No celebration. No scream. Just staring at the bloodstained gloves. For the first time, he understood, Cuz hadn't trained a boxer. He'd built a survivor forged in fire. Mike walked to his corner. Cuz met him with a silent look. No praise. No need. They'd spoken all they had to say in the fight. From that day on, Mike tore through opponents like wildfire through dry grass. But deep inside, he never forgot his first match, the one where he thought he'd fall, thought he'd fail, but was lifted by a single voice. Not because Cuz saw weakness in him, but because Cuz knew he was far stronger than he realized. After his first victory, Mike's name began to spread beyond the dim-lit gyms and the cold corners of the Bronx. People spoke of him like a storm in the making, not because of perfect technique, not because of speed or precision, but because of something wild, primal, as if a beast lived inside him waiting to be unleashed. Cuz knew that early fame was like fire. If uncontrolled, it would burn its maker to ashes. He pulled Mike away from the Bronx, brought him to Catskill, where forest and silence began to forge a mind as solid as steel. But fame had already cast its light into the dark corners of Mike. The media came. Cameras, questions, fake applause. They didn't see a child who once went hungry, who once stole to survive, who was drowned in fear. They only saw a teenager killing men barehanded in the ring and called it talent. But Cuz wouldn't let Mike lose himself. He took him to the old gym every morning, where chalk dust floated like living memories. They trained in silence. No music, no crowd. Only the sound of leather on leather, and breath sharp like survival. Fame is poison if you drink it still starving for love, Cuz once said, eyes fixed on the heavy bag. Mike began to understand. Not everyone who cheers is your friend. Some people wait for you to fall so they can feed on the ruin. And fame, it can make a fighter believe he's a god and die like a fool. In a bout in New York, Mike was matched with an older, experienced fighter. This man wasn't afraid, wasn't moved by the hype. He fought like those who've seen it all, not fast, but deadly. In the first round, Mike took a counter uppercut straight to the jaw and staggered. For the first time after a string of wins, things went blurry. Cuz didn't yell. He just stared, eyes like blades, silently saying, "Get up on your own. You must learn to fight when no one believes in you." And Mike stood, not for the fame, not for the crowd, but because if he fell now, all the years of training, the days at Tryon, that first night meeting, it would all mean nothing. He rose. The fight lasted 4 rounds. Each punch tore open old memories. The final left hook dropped the opponent cold. No one expected it. No one believed it. Mike Tyson, age 17, became a phenomenon. But when the lights went out, he sat alone in the locker room, blood still on his forehead, and Kaz entered, placing a hand on his shoulder. No words. Just the look of a father who knows his son finally understood. Victory isn't the destination, it's a choice. Either consume your former self or be devoured by it. That night, Mike didn't celebrate. He returned to the gym the next morning, earlier than usual. No command. No push. He just knew. If you want to survive in this world, you must learn to win when no one's watching. And so, a legend was sharpened, not by fame, but by blood, tears, and the awakening that only silence brings. After his first victory, Mike's name began to spread beyond the dim-lit gyms and the cold corners of the Bronx. People spoke of him like a storm in the making, not because of perfect technique, not because of speed or precision, but because of something wild, primal, as if a beast lived inside him waiting to be unleashed. Kaz knew that early fame was like fire. If uncontrolled, it would burn its maker to ashes. He pulled Mike away from the Bronx, brought him to Catskill, where forest and silence began to forge a mind as solid as steel. But fame had already cast its light into the dark corners of Mike. The media came. Cameras, questions, fake applause. They didn't see a child who once went hungry, who once stole to survive, who was drowned in fear. They only saw a teenager killing men barehanded in the ring and called it talent. But Kaz wouldn't let Mike lose himself. He took him to the old gym every morning, where chalk dust floated like living memories. They trained in silence. No music, no crowd. Only the sound of leather on leather, and breath sharp like survival. Fame is poison if you drink it still starving for love, Kaz once said, eyes fixed on the heavy bag. Mike began to understand. Not everyone who cheers is your friend. Some people wait for you to fall so they can feed on the ruin. And fame, it can make a fighter believe he's a god and die like a fool. In a bout in New York, Mike was matched with an older, experienced fighter. This man wasn't afraid, wasn't moved by the hype. He fought like those who've seen it all, not fast, but deadly. In the first round, Mike took a counter uppercut straight to the jaw and staggered. For the first time after a string of wins, things went blurry. Kaz didn't yell. He just stared, eyes like blades, silently saying, "Get up on your own. You must learn to fight when no one believes in you." And Mike stood, not for the fame, not for the crowd, but because if he fell now, all the years of training, the days at Tryon, that first night meeting, it would all mean nothing. He rose. The fight lasted 4 rounds. Each punch tore open old memories. The final left hook dropped the opponent cold. No one expected it. No one believed it. Mike Tyson, age 17, became a phenomenon. But when the lights went out, he sat alone in the locker room, blood still on his forehead, and Kaz entered, placing a hand on his shoulder. No words. Just the look of a father who knows his son finally understood. Victory isn't the destination, it's a choice. Either consume your former self or be devoured by it. That night, Mike didn't celebrate. He returned to the gym the next morning, earlier than usual. No command. No push. He just knew. If you want to survive in this world, you must learn to win when no one's watching. And so, a legend was sharpened, not by fame, but by blood, tears, and the awakening that only silence brings.